Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Help for the Guildless. My name, of course, is Antoine. Now, before I start, I do have a little bit of business I have to deal with. Because life has become a little hectic for me, I have had to do something earlier than I had planned. Now, I am not going to monetize my videos still. I have had to open up a Patreon. I'm not going to pimp it as much as certain other YouTubers do. I am just going to say that the link is going to be at the end of the videos from now on and also in the description. If you want to become a Patreon, please do so. It would help me greatly and I would appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And on top of that, you could also suggest some type of reward system. I'm not used to doing these things, so it's kind of a new situation for me. But with that out of the way, let's get on with the show, shall we? Buzzfeed is at the top of the list of one of the worst news sites ever. Their articles are nothing but jokes, and they are filled with nothing but social justice whiners that try to put a feminist spin on something, or a social justice spin, or even a racist spin. And with the second season of Stranger Things being up on Netflix, well, they decided to go after it. If you haven't seen or binge-watched Stranger Things 1 and 2, I'm letting you know now, this is going to be full of spoilers. Ye have been warned. BuzzFeed News, which is ironic in the worst way. Stranger Things is nostalgic for a time before nerds were toxic. I'm going to let that title sink in while I read this. The second season of the Netflix series has ventured where the first did not, into the realm of underdog wish fulfillment. Underdog wish fulfillment, this is going to be good. Stranger Things made Egos into a meme, and the most essential Halloween accessory of the past 2 years. It reintroduced the world to the wonders of the defunct Farrah Fawcett Fabergé Organics hair care line. An array of products it could now probably resurrect as merchandise. It offered up the case for Dungeons and Dragons as not just a role-playing game, but a useful analogy for decoding the impending apocalypse. Yet the biggest brand refresh the Duffer Brothers Netflix series has attempted isn't on behalf of a product, but rather a group of people. For 2 seasons now, Stranger Things has been an ongoing venture to rehabilitate the nerd. I laughed at the Farrah Fawcett Fabergé Organics hair care induction. I thought it was hilarious. And Dungeons and Dragons, for those of us who have played it, has never just been a role-playing game. We have used Dungeons and Dragons terminology as analogies and analogues for decoding not just the impending apocalypse, but everyday life. And the problem I have right now, and the problem that you're going to see going forward, is the rehabilitation of the nerd. I didn't know nerds had to be rehabilitated. As far as I knew, nerds, geeks, goobers, and outcasts were all still exactly that. But of course, with things like Gamergate being considered nothing but a hate movement, Comicgate being considered nothing but a hate movement for the old boys club wanting their comics to have nothing but sexy, underclothed women in it, even though Wonder Woman saved DC movies and was a box office blockbuster, I didn't know the nerds needed to be rehabilitated. Unfortunately, BuzzFeed all believe that nerds are now the most toxic people out there. Bringing our culture back to an understanding of nerds as underdogs that everyone can root for is no small achievement in 2017, when the concept of the nerd has become so ascendant as to barely be a meaningful identity anymore, and simultaneously so toxic that the resentful gatekeepers of nerddom who remain are more likely to be associated with doxing and death threats than with, say, the superhero movies that everyone watches. Between Gamergate, the annual onslaught of angry puppies determined to hijack the Hugo Awards, the James Damore memo, and the endless plethora of online rants about SJWs ruining the world, the connotations of modern-day nerdiness have more to do with persecution complexes and bullying than being socially rejected or bullied. There's a reason why, BuzzFeed. There's a reason why it seems nerds are standing up for themselves. because they got tired of being picked on when they were younger. I was part of that group. I now take the term nerd and geek as a badge of honor. We've been bullied. We've been socially rejected. And now that we are older, we understand that we were more creative, we were more intelligent, and we were more fun to be around altogether. To quote Leverage, one of the most amazing characters ever created, Hardison, it's the age of the geek, baby. And it really is. That's why, in 2017, the idea of the nerd underdog is so unbelievable. Because the most powerful and richest man in the country, besides the president, is Bill Gates. And Bill Gates is the nerdiest of nerds that have ever nerd or ever wished to nerd in the history of this country. People fear nerds now. As I said, age of the geek. In returning to a simpler time, when an all-encompassing obsession with sci-fi and fantasy was still something that could get you thrown into a locker, Stranger Things provides a form of escapism that has nothing to do with alternate dimensions. It invites viewers to indulge in the sweet self-righteousness that can come with getting excluded for being uncool. That's a delicate, dicey feat that the series mostly managed to pull off in its first season, but in its second there's significantly more present-day baggage weighing it down. Jocks rule and nerds drool in the fictional 80s of Hawkins, Indiana. Stranger Things is awash with longing for the way a shared love of unhip things, like Tolkien and dressing up as Ghostbusters, can be a badge of honor and a secret language amongst its main characters, but also in a way that feels a little perverse, nostalgic for the straightforward injustice of being derided because of that love. This worked best when it focused on the intense bond between Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and the missing Will, depicted them as friends so close that they lived in their own slightly tweaked reality. It wasn't just the closed world of relatively unsupervised kids, but one that primed them to believe in and gave them vocabulary to understand the monster other characters take longer to come around on. And it was a world that was, at least in its first season, aimed to feel intimate while also being earnestly welcoming. The strangest thing about Stranger Things is that it's a mainstream show that looks back fondly to a time when something like it would be hopelessly niche. In 2017, most of the series' unapologetic throwback movie references aren't obscure at all, from Jurassic Park to E.T. to Gremlins to Firestarter to It. The show's bar for entry and spotting homage is set intentionally, invitingly low. It's able to generate an atmosphere that's as cozy as it is creepy because it is bent on welcoming everyone into its band of outsiders. It's because Stranger Things wanted to be successful that it looks and took the nostalgic 80s and threw it in your face. Everything from the music to the opening sequence to the neon. E.T., Gremlins, Firestarter, and It, yes, 80s. Jurassic Park, not so much. Anyway, the reason the bar was set so low is so that yuppies like you could get into it. It has nothing to do with wanting to dress up as the Ghostbusters or having a secret language because you understand Tolkien. There is no injustice for being a close group of friends. And the fact that this show would be considered niche? I'm sorry. Did you not realize that E.T., Gremlins, It, and Firestarter were extremely popular in the 80s? So making a show based off of them or having throwbacks to them would actually be extremely popular. E.T. was one of the biggest box office successes of the time. Do you think only nerds went to go see it? At least that's the idea. But it's telling that the Duffers underestimated the degree to which viewers would latch on to Barb, who became a runaway internet favorite based on very little screen time. Poor doomed Barb, sitting by herself on that diving board in her mom fashions while the popular kids canoodled inside. emerged as a poignant, acutely relatable figure for anyone who's ever been left behind by a friend's changing social status. The short shrift given to her death, especially when compared to the seemingly community-wide search for Will, was evidence that while she, like the main kids, was an outcast, she was not the right kind of outcast. Or at least not the kind of outcast the series creators thought anyone would be invested in. The second season worked hard to enact justice for Bob, delving into Nancy's guilt over her best friend's death and introducing Bob's parents and their grief-stricken search for closure. But there are other new, even bigger fractures in the bubble of inclusive outsiderness the show has struggled to maintain. Bob is your catalyst. Now, I like the subtle way that you pointed out, because she was an older girl, she wasn't the right kind of outcast. Here's the thing. She wasn't necessarily an outcast. She was just being cast out by her friend, which, yes, a lot of people can relate to. It had nothing to do with her being a girl. It has to do with her being upset that her best friend ditched her to go have sex. Now, Bob dying was only tragic to certain people. And yes, she got internet famous. And it's because Bob was quirky. But it's not the first time a tertiary character who was meant to die was made famous by fans. Now, Buzzfeed, I know you don't understand this because you pivot her as the moralistic superhero female identitarian trophy piece. But Harley Quinn was a throwaway character in Batman the Animated Series because the creators thought that Joker needed a ward like Batman did. So they decided, let's give them a female. Harley Quinn was born. The fans are the reason she's as big as she is. This is what fandoms do. Did you not know this? Puberty turned out to be an even more trying antagonist than the evil entity looming large on the horizon of the Upside Down. No, it didn't. The monster merely wanted to take over and destroy the world as the characters knew it. Puberty, far more pernicious, sent the show drifting back towards retrograde gender norms and character patterns it had previously managed to avoid, one in which the male nerd always gets rewarded with romance, in a stereotype the series initially subverted in its sweet central relationship of Mike and Eleven, because Eleven wasn't just the girl, she was also the creature, a dynamic that was genuinely unpredictable and sometimes, like when she broke her arm of that bully in season 1, unsettling. As if the kid in the Iron Giant somehow ended up dating the robot. She's upset that 11 ended up with the main character. Not only is she upset that 11 ended up with the main character, but that the main character was a nerd. You know, in season 2, 11 isn't just the girl. She goes out on her own. She does her own thing. It's only at the end that her and Mike even rekindle any type of relationship. And there was a bond between 11 and Mike in the first season. Mike was heartbroken when she left. But no. Gender norms take precedent. I love that. Gender norms take precedent over everything. Because 11 didn't fall in love with her quote-unquote sister. Or 11 didn't fall in love with Max. Or Mike and Will didn't have a homosexual relationship. Gender norms. You do realize this takes place in the 80's, right? Where gender norms were the norm. And that it was very rare to have an openly homosexual person as your best friend. Or even out there. They were always called the funny uncle. Or my aunt and her live-in friend. Then the monster. It's not unsettling that 11 would fall for the boy that fought so hard to protect her. Because of the way that she was raised. If we're going to take armchair psychology into this, you are failing. But the second season ended with a series of pairings off at the snowball that felt a lot more traditional and blithely heteronormative happy ending that also came depressingly close to presenting romance as recompense for its character's heroism. Mike and 11 were dramatically reunited, and Lucas got a slow dance and a kiss of his own with the new arrival Max. Sink, who is 15, Sadie Sink, who was 15, said she felt uncomfortable about shooting the kiss, which wasn't originally in the script, a fact that apparently only made the Duffers more eager to include it. Dustin, left on the wrong end of that love triangle, instead scored a dance with Nancy, who assured him that eventually he'd be a lady killer. Girls this age are dumb, she advised, but give them a few years and they'll wise up. You're going to drive them nuts. Even Will, bowl-cut, recently possessed pallor and all, ended up sharing an at-arm's-length shuffle with some unnamed partner. What's jarring here isn't so much the sudden onset of puppy love between characters who were strongly coded as children last year, that's middle school for you, but rather the one-sided neatness of it. It feels like the narrative's concern is distributing kisses and reassurances of desirability to its young men, the romantic affirmation they apparently deserve after their trials and tribulations, rather than dealing with all of its characters even-handedly. What? The reason Maxine was nervous and uncomfortable about the kiss is probably because she's never kissed anyone before. And if she has, it wasn't on camera. And the Duffers saw that and used it as motivation for the actress to portray her nervousness as a child, preteen, teenager going through puberty and kissing a boy she likes. Which, by the way, I want to point out that the red-headed, soulless 15-year-old got involved with the young black man. That wasn't okay? No. Do you want to know why it wasn't okay? It's because Max didn't end up with Dustin, who was the overweight, geeky kid. Which then you would say it was just because he was a geek that he got the girl that he wanted, and that it was racism that put Lucas on the outside of that triangle. The rejoining of Mike and Eleven being dramatic is because Eleven had been hidden away from the world and was supposed to still be hidden away, if you paid attention to the ending, because of the fact that she was who she was. Which means, up until that fucking point, Mike had probably not seen her. So yes, it was dramatic, because she was happy to see him and he was happy to see her. And as for the advice, girls that age go for the cool kids. Nancy was only telling him something to, one, make him feel better, because he got turned down every step he took, and advising Dustin that they will eventually wisen up to the fact that he is a genuinely good guy. Girls that age want the cool kids. Do you want to know why I know this? Because I was Dustin! Not missing the teeth, but I was overweight and I was a geek. I wish I would have had the girl I was crushing on in the first season of whatever bring me out to dance, at a school dance, being the hottest girl there, and tell me these things. It would do wonders for my self-esteem. I'm not going to go through this whole article because it's already running extremely long. I'm just going to go through the next couple paragraphs and then we will definitely be done with this. To watch Season 2 of Stranger Things through its end is to watch signs of present-day cultural toxicity approach like shark fins poking out of the water. Eleven and Max get left with the tensions between them unresolved, as if there's only room for one token female in the party, and they'll have to vie for the spot. Mike, fake geek girls Max when she suggests her role in the group can be that of a non-D&D approved Zoomer, and Dustin walks away with the message that eventually women will wise up and throw themselves at his more deserving feet, a pernicious assurance that can blossom into ugly, unfounded entitlement. And why wouldn't he take it to heart, when it's an expectation the series also underscores in the relationship of its older characters? Before Bob meets his gruesome end, his romance with Joyce serves as a middle-aged fulfillment of Nancy's prophecy, proving that the one-time founder of Hawkins AV Club can eventually attain the girl he crushed on from afar as a teen. Nancy herself drifts into the arms of the dreary Jonathan, not out of any evident attraction, but because she seems to eventually surrender to the idea it's her narrative destiny, as someone caught between the prom king and the moody loner. Listen, people grow up. These people have been put into intense situations. And since you didn't pay attention to Season 1, Nancy goes after Jonathan because Nancy was already attracted to Jonathan. They go over that. It's when his father left that he stopped interacting with people because he had to go get a job. The attraction was already there. She didn't eventually surrender to the idea of her narrative destiny being stuck with the mopey loner kid. They shared things together. You are trying to look at this through a lens that shouldn't exist for this show. You're trying to find something wrong with it, and you're having a really hard time pinpointing it. You don't like that 11 and Mike and Dustin and Lucas and Max are all growing up. So what is your problem with Stranger Things 2? That the seeds of what they were pushing in season 1 at the end were coming to fruition? Or was it because 11 didn't turn out to be a lesbian? Maybe it's because Hopper didn't fall in love with Bob. I know. You didn't like that the Doctor was not trying to save the creatures because deep down it knew the creatures were actually his own psychological outpouring of emotion towards his hidden agenda of trying to hide that he was an openly gay person in a heterosexual world. When you figure out what's wrong with Stranger Things Season 2, Allison, then we can talk. Up until this point, you have done nothing but try and rattle off one thing after the other to try and prove that this show is sexist, and that it's toxic, and that it's trying to make the geeks seem like the heroes. The geeks are the heroes! That's the whole point of the fucking show! That the geeks that no one listens to knew everything all along! Or did you not fucking catch that? It's obvious that Buzzfeed is just trying to ruin things that people like. So, with that being said, those are my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. I'd love to know yours. I apologize for how long this is. If you like what I do here, please hit like, share, and subscribe. If you do subscribe, hit that bell icon so you know when I upload. If you want to support the channel even more, please follow the Patreon link down below. Become a patron. It would really help the channel. If you want to follow me on any of the social medias, all the links are down below. And with that being said, this has been Help for the Guildless. My name, once again, is Antoine. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.